Hi guys, if you're new here, my name is Sam and I make videos about makeup, chronic illness, and whatever I want, and somehow Sammoween is over. It is Halloween today. Well, it's Halloween tomorrow, but while you're watching this, it's Halloween today. I forgot to put lip product on. One moment. Okay, now I look less weird. So, we have a hair up moment, and I apologize for any sweating. My earring just fell out. The Midwest decided instead of snowing on Halloween like usual, it's going to be 80 degrees and it's real weird. But why we're here today is to wrap up my 31 days of movies. Today, Halloween, I am watching 1978 Halloween. I'm not going to rank that because if you have been around for a minute, you know where my ranking is. I'm sitting off to the side because up here is going to be my tier list. So instead of the normal S, A, B, C, D, whatever, I made my own this year. Our top tier, which would be S tier, is now. This is what I call horror. The best of what I watched goes here. Second, solid enough. I would maybe watch it again with friends, but I wouldn't buy it. Third, womp womp. This is the stuff that had promise, started out good, and just flopped. WTF. What did I just watch? What is this? I don't know. And our bottom tier is immediately no. Immediately no. No. So let's just jump right into this. I'm not going to go back over like the synopsis of the movie, but I'm going to briefly, with no spoilers, try to explain what the movie's about. I don't know how good I'm gonna be. So the first movie I watched was Long Legs. Long Legs is going in now. That's what I call horror. This movie was great. I really liked throughout the movie they focused on the main character's breathing because that really put you in a similar headspace to hers where you felt anxiety. We didn't focus too hard on Nick Cage's character, which was creepy as heck. I am glad I had avoided what he looked like that entire time until I saw the movie somehow. I don't know how. The payoff was great. I loved it. This is definitely what I want out of a horror movie. Let me just briefly say that movie's basically the FBI's hunting a serial killer is what Long Legs is about. Next, Immaculate. This is a nun movie, a religious nun movie. This solidly goes in what the fuck because it dragged on a little too long. It wasn't horrific. I thought it was okay. And then we get to the end, like the last third of the movie. It ended up being way too long. Like they dragged out the scenes way too much. But I kept just saying like, what the fuck? What the fuck was that? No, it wasn't good. I didn't like it. But it also wasn't the worst thing that I saw. It wasn't an immediate no. Salems Lot. This is based on the Stephen King novel. There were a lot of things that upset me about this movie. Like there was no surprise twist like the book when you find out what the bad guy is. I put this one in womp womp because I was hoping it would be great. I was hoping it would be solid, but it was just a disappointment. Hold your breath. This one, solid enough. It wasn't horror in the traditional sense of what you would think horror is, but I liked it a lot. I thought it was an interesting take on horror. It definitely focused a lot on like the grief aspect where a lot of horror could be said to focus on grief in one way or another, but this one was very like grief focused. The movie took place during the Dust Bowl, I think, so it's like a period piece, which I don't usually like, but I did like this because in my mind it's like we see a lot of like Victorian horror, but what would it be like to live in the middle of the desert? And like what would horror be like in the middle of the desert, I guess. Smile. Now that's what I call horror. I went into this movie, I didn't really know what it was about, so I'm not going to tell you what it's about if you don't know. I thought it was going to be cheesy. I thought I was going to be disappointed. I thought that it just wasn't going to be like, I don't know, more than a cash grab. It was fantastic. Now, I've heard the second one is a cash grab, exactly like I expected and probably predicted in my video at the beginning of this whole series. Yeah, definitely a good movie. Abigail, a vampire movie, solid enough. If it, like, it was very campy, but if it had, like, stayed a little more on target, I would have bumped it up to now that's what I call horror. So I would say it's like a cusp between solid enough and now that's what I call horror. It was really fun. I liked that. Happy Death Day, womp womp. I knew going into it, it was going to be like Groundhog's Day. She just keeps reliving the day that she dies over and over again until she figures out who is killing her. It just dragged on for so long. And then it wasn't that it was a horror take on Groundhog Day. It was just the way they were choosing to execute it. Because I think it could have been a good idea, but it just flopped. The First Omen. Purely what the fuck is this movie? I feel like it had a better story than Immaculate, but it was like more what the fuck. I was like, this movie is so boring, and then an adult demon hand came out of a vagina and you saw the whole vagina, and I don't know what to say or think or how to feel. What the fuck is happening in this movie was a later one. Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird one. It is a nun movie. It's a nun, like an American nun. Are they both American nuns? Yes. Both are American nuns that go to Rome. They really feel like copy-paste movies now in retrospect. I'm not going to live here too long. Let's move on to the next one. Cabin in the Woods. Immediately no. Immediately no. This movie was such a good idea, and then Joss Whedon flushed it down the toilet into a septic tank full of decaying feces. The premise of the movie is like, what if we simulate a horror movie and like we pick all the things that happen to these people? That sounds fun, right? And then the twist was just bad. And the acting wasn't very good either. Caddo Lake. I wouldn't have picked this movie if I knew it was M. Night Shyamalan, because M. Night Shyamalan movies all belong in what the fuck. What the fuck did I just watch? This movie was so bad and so confusing. I have something for you. I keep looking at myself to make sure I'm in frame. So, you can't, like, see all this? Let me zoom you out. I made, with Eric's help, a whole fucking chart trying to make sense of this movie. Like, that's how bad it was. It's like, I didn't even know what was happening, really. I can't even explain to you what this movie is supposed to be about. I just can't. It belongs in What the Fuck. It doesn't belong in Immediately No, because I watched the whole thing. Immediately No is either really, really bad movies or movies I did not finish. Which, the ones I did not finish came closer to the end because I was just tired. But I do not recommend this movie. It was god-awful. When I tried to look up to get some help, like, look in the reviews, they didn't know what it was about either. They, like, gave it 5 stars, but they had no idea how to explain what this movie was about. VHS 2, Immediately No. The first scene is, like, a zoom of a nipple. There's a weird amount of sex. Like, there was one scene, I'm gonna spoil this for you, so if you have any desire to watch VHS 2 and you don't want to hear this, like, skip ahead 30 seconds. Like, to stop seeing ghosts, you, like, had sex. Yeah. No, I quit that shit. Evil Dead Rise. Now that's what I call horror. This movie was fantastic. Every moment of that movie had my attention. I haven't seen, like, this I might mark as, let me look ahead here. Yeah, Evil Dead Rise might be the best movie I watched this year, or tied with another one that's coming on later. But that's how good it is. So it's the Evil Dead premise, like, demons take over people's bodies. There's not much more to say. It's very gory, it's very action-packed, very campy. Fantastic. So Speak No Evil would have been the next movie, but, like, it wasn't actually streaming where it was supposed to be. So instead I watched Mandy, which is another Nick Cage movie. I ranked that solid enough. It was a little too long for me. It was a slow burn. It was definitely like trippy, psychedelic horror. Solid though. Basically they're just like up against like a satanic cult. The menu, I never got to. I was super exhausted that day, and I meant to circle back around to it, but I have been swamped between personal life stuff and YouTube stuff, and my costume, that I just did not have time to get to it. I do plan to watch it because people messaged me and said, like, they hope I watch it because they thought it was really good, so we'll get around to that at one point, but it's not in the ranking because I just didn't get to it. Ready or Not, now that's what I call horror. I guess you could say this is more of like a thriller. It's not necessarily horror. However, I find having to hide from my in-laws so they don't murder me kind of horrifying. The acting was great. The pacing was great. The length was great. The idea was great. I just loved everything about it. Rosemary's Baby. Now that's what I call horror. This is a classic for a reason. Lady gets pregnant with the devil. I'm sure everyone knows what that movie's about. But I really like it. It is a slow burn. It's kind of a longer movie, but it actually kept my attention, so I won't complain about the length too much. Talk to Me. I couldn't watch that, so it was not streaming anywhere. I'm not sure how I want to do this next year because I like on the 1st to already have my movies picked and upload the thing. And a lot of streaming services seem to do this where like a week into October, they'll remove some of the movies and there's not that much of a warning. So if I put something on my list and it's not to watch until the end of the month and they remove it in the middle of the month, I don't really know. But next year I know I'm not going to put where it's streaming just because I had to tell people when things switched. Like there were multiple movies on here towards the end where they moved it from Peacock to Max or something like that. So instead of that, I watched Garrett Watts and Andrew Sawicki's ghost hunting video on YouTube instead of a movie that day. And I can't say it's horror because it's not horror, but it was definitely fun. I would put it in S tier though because I love those guys. The Witch, womp womp. This was long and boring, and I'm not super into time period stuff. That isn't what got me. It was just boring. I don't feel like there was any payoff. I don't feel like there was much witch. There was witch in it, but I don't feel like it was witch enough, personally. So, could have been good, or could have been great, was barely good. Dr. Sleep, solid enough. I think they did a good enough job with it. It was a little too long for me. You'll hear me say that a lot. You'll see that I said it a lot on Instagram. No movie needs to be over 2 hours. Some movies need to be 2 hours, but they don't need to be over 2 hours. You could say what you need to say. And if you need to make a movie longer than 2 hours, you need to make a second movie. That's just how I feel about it. Dr. Sleep is another Stephen King adaptation. The sequel to The Shining. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. This is just like a bunch of like college friends screwing around on a weekend get together, I guess. This was solid enough. It was fun. It was campy. It was poking fun at Gen Z tropes. Not Gen Z themselves, but Gen Z tropes. Eden Lake, immediately no. A couple goes on a vacation to a lake and a bunch of teenagers just like bully the crap out of them. This was just torture porn. I turned it off. I'm not into that. There was no story there. It was just like teenagers attacking people. Pearl, solid enough. I don't know. I personally really liked X. Pearl was fun. I feel like X was just more slashery. Pearl was more of a build-up. It was definitely good, but not as slashery as I hoped it would be. I don't really know how to describe Pearl, like what it's about. A farmer who wants to be an actress, I guess, is the best way to describe that. Late Night with the Devil. This is the one I said was tied with Evil Dead Rise. If it was going to be tied for the best movie I saw. I went into this with high hopes, which is dangerous with a horror movie. Set in the 70s, talk show, found footage, 70s and found footage is what put it right up here. And it was fantastic. I gave it like a 77 out of 10 on my Instagram. On Instagram, I rate things out of 10. And sometimes it's just funny. Like, what the fuck out of 10 was, one or two of them. This is basically just found footage of a late night talk show where they talk with a girl who has a demon inside her. It was great. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. St. Maud, what the fuck? This is a home health care nurse who is weirdly religious and she becomes obsessed with saving one of her patients. It's an A24 movie and I ranked it. This is an A24 movie out of 10. Like, some A24 movies are great and other A24 movies you're like, well, there goes 2 hours of my life. The Poughkeepsie Tapes, solid enough. I probably would have ranked this, now that's what I call horror, if they didn't dawdle and drag out some of the, like, found footage, like, torture scenes. I feel like it was a little milked. A little too focused on that. It was just kind of like, Nefarious, immediately no. I got somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes into this movie. The whole movie was just two men sitting at a table while one man talked obsessively, who was supposedly a demon. I don't know. I was bored. It felt like the worst talk show in the world. Nothing the demon was saying was interesting. So I quit that. The House That Jack Built, now that's what I call horror. This is another one that I feel like could have been about 20 to 30 minutes shorter, and it would have been even more perfect. I love this. And my earring fell out again. This is like through the eyes of a serial killer. Think like Dexter, the TV show, but you're definitely not on the side of the killer. There's no sympathy for the killer here. It is just fascinating. It was a fun watch. I really liked it. I just wish it was a little bit shorter. Excision, immediately no. This movie made me straight up angry. I got 20 minutes in. I have no idea what the plot is. No fucking idea. I can't even tell you what the movie is about. But what made me mad was this is like a teenager. And the 20 minutes I made it were like endless sex scenes of like things she was playing out in her head and some actual sex scenes. And I'm just kind of like, why are we watching so much sex happen with a teenager? It makes me uncomfortable. We should not be doing this. No. I rated it. Whoever wrote this movie should be on a watch list out of 10. I don't want to use like certain words here because I don't want my video to get flagged, but I felt like focusing on somebody daydreaming about those kinds of activities when they are not a grown-up is just gross. My Soul to Take. Now that's what I call horror. This is a Wes Craven movie. This was really fun. I loved it. How do I explain this? Like 6 kids are born on the night a serial killer disappears. And like they feel like they have to go through rituals to like keep him from coming back or something like that. This is fun. It was campy. Nice little slasher. Wasn't anything too serious. Was the perfect length. Definitely horror. And the last movie I have here is Night House, which I watched today at the recommendation of my friend Chris. Thank you, Chris. I really liked this. I'm putting this in not what I call horror. I wasn't sure at first. I had to sit on it for a little while because it is not your traditional horror. Basically a woman's husband unalives himself and she's dealing with the grief of all that in basically a haunted house. And I thought this was really great. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil anything, but a few things I felt were like kind of confusing at first until I sat and thought about it, and then I realized what they were doing, and I just think it was really well done. I really enjoyed it. I carved my pumpkin while I was watching it, and yeah, just a solid horror movie that's significantly different than other horror movies. And that is all I have for you today, and that is a wrap on Sammoween. You will see this background one more time because I filmed a collab video that's going up on Sunday with a friend, and I pre-filmed it, so this is not the last time you'll see this, but Sammoween is over until next year. If you have any suggestions for a video you'd like to see next year, please let me know down below. If you took part in watching any of these movies, let me know what you thought about them below, and I will see you guys next time.